Thank you all for staying with us on 24 Plus. We have had so many guests come in, and we are so grateful of you all's time. Today, sitting with me here now is Casey Bryant, an immigration attorney. We were just going over the full title, so please give us just a little bit of a breakdown of who you are and what you do.
Sure, yeah. My name is Casey Bryant. I'm an immigration attorney. I'm the executive director for Advocates for Immigrant Rights, which is a nonprofit immigration law firm based here in Memphis.
Okay, so I can imagine with everything, you all are busy.
Yep, we are very busy.
Well, this is a perspective that I think is really important here because we know ICE is a big proponent of the Memphis Safe Task Force. And we've heard a lot of stories, but those stories are really hard to tell because a lot of the people who are involved in them have a fear of speaking out sometimes. So it's not always easy for reporters to get to them. But I'm sure, obviously, as an immigration attorney, you're speaking to families and people affected by some of these detentions. So what are you seeing since the Memphis Safe Task Force came to town?
Yeah, well, I just want to say that ICE isn't just a big proponent of the task force, they are a big component of the task force. And so most of the federal agents that are a part of the task force have also been deputized to do immigration enforcement operations. And so basically what we're seeing around town is just a huge influx of officers who are doing immigration law. Mm-hmm. They're pulling people over, they're going to people's houses, they're going to businesses, and they're actively looking for people who are non-citizens in this country.
And how is that, how many cases would you say have you taken in, I know you probably had a normal amount or an amount, but when they came into town, how much of an increase was it?
I mean, we have definitely increased our capacity to handle cases for people who have been detained by ICE. You know, our numbers would only just be proportional to the size of the organization, but it certainly has increased. And we've, like I said, had to increase our own capacity. We've hired more attorneys so that we can actually do the work that needs to be done. And some of the work is just getting in contact with people initially, which is hard enough because at the point that someone gets detained, they're not immediately booked into a system that's searchable. So it could be days before a family can find out where their relative is actually detained.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yes, that's...
So sometimes when people call us, they're reporting like it's a missing persons report.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting kind of to wrap your head around when you make that case that way. So we had District Attorney Steve Mulray in here earlier, and he had mentioned that most of the arrests in total are nonviolent, and then of the percent that related to immigration arrests, most of them were people who were, other than being in the country illegally, pretty much law-abiding contributors that were doing productive things for the city. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. Short answer.
You know, I mean, it is true if you're not considering the way the government is framing immigration enforcement period, which is kind of defining anyone who's here without legal status as being a criminal. Mm-hmm. And so all of these violent crimes or big arrests are just kind of including immigrants.
Right. Even
if by other standards, actual definitions of crimes, there's no crime committed. In fact, even the people who are picked up or arrested by ICE or in the process of an immigration enforcement are not being prosecuted criminally for being in the United States without permission. They're immediately being put into immigration proceedings that are totally separate and different with different rules and different protections than a criminal process.
Okay, wow. Yeah. So how are you able to, like, what's your legal counsel to some of your clients? Like, how are you helping them through that process?
So the attorneys in my office mainly do representation before the immigration court. So Memphis has an immigration court. It handles cases for people who are in Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, Kentucky.
Okay.
And so that is the bulk of the work that we do. For people who have been detained by ICE or agents that are deputized to practice immigration, we try to get people out first of all. So we're representing people to be released on bond.
How hard is that?
Well, that has gone up and down because there's new interpretation of very old law, there's litigation happening, and it goes back and forth because this government is trying to change the way that we've interpreted settled law to say that most people who get detained who are undocumented are not eligible for bond. So that means that a person who hasn't committed a crime is not being prosecuted for a crime that is detained by ICE in ICE custody is going to be in detention, and that's like a prison, for as long as it takes for them to argue their immigration case, with no possibility for release.
And you can only imagine new cases coming in every day. It kind of just gets bogged down to the bottom.
Yes,
oh my gosh.
yes.
So, bring a human element in here for me. Like, I know you can't give super specifics because of, client privacy, but has there been a moment where you had one particular case where families were separated, or a mother from their child, or just like any type of way you can kind of humanize what is really going on here for us?
I mean, that's all the cases.
Right.
So
I'm sure.
I'll try, there's been cases where, like I'm trying to sort out like which one. I mean, there's definitely ones where mothers are separated from their children. There's ones where mothers are picked up with their children, their children who were born in the United States, and then the whole family unit gets deported back to their country. And so, U.S. citizens are born here and they have a right to be here, but then you have this whole added element that the mom has immigration proceedings happening and has to make a choice. Do I leave my U.S. citizen minor children here in the United States with maybe an auntie or a family friend, or do we all go back even if my children have the right to stay here? I mean, no one wants to leave their kids like that.
Of course not.
We have breadwinners who have been here for 20 years. They're doing all the work for the family, and then suddenly they're disappeared off the streets. And then a family has like no ability to pay their lights or their rent or buy food. And now they're too afraid to take their kids to school. We have people who are just recently become young adults and then are just picked up, even though they've been living their life like as children, going to school and doing all the things that children do. Suddenly they turn 18 and they're adult people, and now they're subject to potential detention by ICE.
Is there anything in the conversation of, okay, you get arrested or detained by ICE, and you haven't had a criminal record, and you are a productive contributor to society, is there any conversation of, let's get this person on the path to citizenship if they can prove they are not a threat to the public safety?
Well,
I know we're getting into it.
Well, that conversation really should, it should be able to play out in immigration court, because that's where it would. So in the past, ICE has been given kind of broad latitude to make decisions about who to detain and who not to detain, kind of based on an evaluation of someone's threat to the safety of the public and their potential for continuing to engage in their removal proceedings. And so that discretion is still there, but ICE is like not there. They only have like one decision that they're making, that's detain. And so in the past, we've been able to work with immigration officials to say, well, maybe, what about how this person is doing all these things and they are involved in the community and they have family here. How about they be given the opportunity to work through their immigration case, not from a jail cell? And then they look at that and they're like, well, let's be reasonable people together and make this make sense. But at this moment, that reason and thought process and that is not really on the table for how immigration is working right now. Because I think the primary goal has been stated by the administration that they want to deport as many people as possible. And that's it. So do what you have to do to deport as many people as possible. Start arresting as many people as possible. Put them in the worst potential environment in detention and make them lose hope. And then take away their ability to get out of detention, and then make them go through immigration court proceedings where they no longer have access to the same applications that they used to have access to. Bingo.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So did you happen to watch any of President Donald Trump's visit and the roundtable and what was said? And the ICE director, or Todd Lyons, being there, he mentioned about over 600 illegal immigrants detained, if you will, or arrested. Yeah. So, what were your thoughts on what was said at that roundtable?
Well, I mean, like I said before, I feel like there's a lot of conflating being in the United States with no lawful status with being a criminal. So I don't really, those numbers, I think he said 619, yes, and then he sort of intimated that those were criminal arrests. And so maybe they were criminal arrests. I don't know. There is nuance. All of the numbers that they gave have nuance that they did not explain. And, they said 7,000 arrests. And then they broke down, felonies, drug stuff, sexual assaults. But none of that adds up to 7,000. So, what about all those other people? And how many of them were immigrant people? How many of them had final convictions? How many had just allegations or charges? I mean, so this nuance it makes the story sound a little different when you start just scratching at the surface about what you're hearing.
Right. At this point, what is the best case scenario for an immigrant who's been detained and looking for your services? How do you fight for the best case scenario? What does that even look like?
I mean, right now we are having to go instead of just going straight to the immigration court to ask for a bond, we're having now to go to the federal court, the U.S. federal court, to ask for something called a writ of habeas corpus, to demand that the government explain why they're detaining someone when it's contrary to what the law actually says.
Oh my.
And so this is a whole added piece of our representation, our work that we did not have before. And across the country, hundreds of immigration attorneys and even federal practitioners are having to do this kind of process now to make the immigration court follow the laws as they're written.
Oh my.
And so, the best case scenario is that we can get someone out of detention so they don't have to fight their case from behind bars. Because when they are behind bars, they're in the West Tennessee Detention Facility in Mason. That's a newly open facility. And then they can get transferred to Louisiana. There's about 10 different detention facilities in Louisiana that opened up during the first Trump administration. And so, I mean, it's really hard. The case is advanced. It goes a lot faster. It's harder to have access to attorneys and to family and to documents. And now, we have a lot of documentation that we have to show that someone is eligible for some kind of form of relief.
Oh, unprecedented times. I'm sure you all did not expect to see this happen. So what do you have to think about the president's visit to Memphis and just coming here touting the Memphis Safe Task Force? I mean, everybody that's been in the studio, I have to ask them because that is the big news of the day. Yeah. We've done both sides,
yes,
of course. So, as an immigration attorney, I think you have an interesting perspective to know or to ask how you feel about President Trump's visit.
Well, okay, I just want to say that, I heard a lot of people sort of talking about how they're grateful that the president would take time to come to our sweet little town, right? We're getting attention that we never had, and maybe that's a normal thing to feel. And it would be normal if the attention wasn't so negative. And the task force it's not just 100% perfect, and I think that it's actually a lot less perfect than that. And for lots of different reasons. Number one, I think it undermines the rule of law. And I think that for the people who live here in Memphis, we are just getting used to having military. Having a militarized city. And with the history of Memphis and the way that feels to a majority black city, that ain't right. And so I don't feel good about the president I don't feel good about the task force at all. And I think that if we say we have a problem with crime, let's deal with crime. Or let's deal with the reasons that crime happens. But don't say one thing and then actually have it be another thing. And so I think it's very disingenuous, all of the things that they said and all of the numbers that they touted, because like I said, they are complex and they are nuanced. And it's just, you just can't throw it out in a buzzword. It just doesn't happen like that. And so come to town, let's have real conversations, because it's the conversations that align people. I mean, like the people you had on the panel earlier, if you don't come to the table and are willing to have conversations, then we can't find any common ground at all, and that's just it.
Most definitely, yeah, I think that's a good point. One thing I wanted to ask you too, because there is a student component now or aspect to all of this. We've done some reporting about how the Memphis Business Academy had a student, 18 years old, high schooler who was riding in the car, I believe with his girlfriend on the way to school. You probably heard about this case. And they were pulled over and he was detained and brought to Mason, Tennessee. And we're talking about an 18-year-old who's still in high school. So then there's been ICE presence at other schools that has been reported. So now it feels like, and then MSCS leaders, or one teacher told us that chronic absenteeism was already a problem, and now students are scared to come to school because either their parent was detained or just the fact that ICE presence is around. So are you all also dealing with child cases as well, or just seeing this play out on school campuses or near?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly represent children. For children by themselves, or, that person was a young adult after they turned 18. And that's the thing that feels so arbitrary. Like you are 17 one day and then you're 18 another day. And when you're 17 and 364 days, you're not really going to be, have a problem with ICE, but then one day later, when you're a passenger in a car and you're not doing I don't know who the driver was or what her thing was, but you're not doing anything except riding in a car, it feels unfair. It is unfair. And so, the issue is that it's really hard in the immigration context to make it fair, make it seem fair again, like to undo what happened. Because once someone is detained, they get into the system, and then they're rolling in that system until they get popped out.
Is the right to due process happening, or is it just slow, or have some of your clients already been deported?
Yes.
I know you mentioned detention, so
Sure.
I wasn't sure if the majority of them are sitting, in Mason, Tennessee, for example, or those Louisiana locations. But have you had a big number? Did they get due process?
I mean.
Ooh,
The
loaded
answer,
question.
yeah. And that's multiple questions. I mean, they have a right, people, regardless of whether they're citizens or not, have a right to due process. The issue with the immigration court and the way that the immigration process works is it's very easy to deny that due process and have no one pay attention or know about it, or not have a clear avenue for advocating for due process. And it's all sort of rooted in the way that it works, and also rooted in law a little bit. And so that's why immigration enforcement is happening in all of this. Like, that's why, because it's an easy kind of like shadow world for someone to get involved in and then get deported. So absolutely, people get deported. If someone goes to immigration court and they don't have a claim to defend their right to stay in the United States, then that's just it. You can't materialize something out of nothing. But a lot of people, and the majority of people I would say that we talk to who have been detained, opt to not fight their case. Because they feel helpless and hopeless.
Wow.
And they just say, forget it. Like the self-deportation concept is pushed really hard on people once they get behind bars, once they're eating gross prison food, once they're sleeping on a really hard mattress with like a Mylar blanket. They're like deprived of their liberty, and then they just quit. They're just like, and then they're getting like, solicited this option for getting out sooner,
right.
Just go back to where you're from. I mean, people go to immigration court, and on the walls there's signs in Spanish and English that say, have you considered self-deportation?
Wow.
Yeah, something like that. I'm hyperbolizing a little bit.
Yeah, that's a lot.
When they are interacting with ICE officials in detention, they say, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you just do that? Like, if you do this, then, these things are going to be easier. So the whole thing is about pushing people out, not giving them the option. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so